Thank you. And nice to meet you in the room and those of you elsewhere. I've got a few slides. I'm going to talk about my ideas and thoughts around this topic. I'd like those people here to sort of involve themselves in the discussion. Please ask questions as we go along. And anybody who wants to tweet in questions or comments, those will be taken on board as we are going through this next hour or so. So the topic, realising the potential of octo and nonagenarians. Hopefully you'll have seen all the information that's been flying around on the Twitter sphere and online. And the topic particularly focusing down on issues of loneliness, boredom and exclusion amongst this age group of over 80-year-olds. We really should include centenarians in that group as well. And then focusing on media and communications issues so that we can give it a frame. I've set out an agenda for what we're going to be doing. So we're going to quickly talk about the context of partly which Maria's covered, the aims of the workshop, why I want to be looking at the over 80s, why should we be doing that, a few sample projects, but the point of this afternoon is to try and understand if there are any gaps in the research. There's an enormous amount of research about older people. Older people, when I first started to look at it, started at the age of 50 in terms of the definition, which is less than half some people's lifetime. So it's quite a large area. The other research I do looks at children, and that is much more sort of on almost an annual basis, but more likely preschool, primary school, secondary or high school, and then perhaps into early years of university. So there's lots to think about there in the sense of if we're looking at an age cohort overall, and indeed should we be looking at this topic as an age cohort, or should we perhaps be considering it in terms of life course, life stage, life events? Life stage and life events which could happen to anybody at any age. So just a little bit about the background of the people who are sponsoring my visit to the university. The EU COST Action, there's hundreds and hundreds of COST Actions, and it's the oldest and I think most successful part of the European Union's cooperation activities. And if you are listening to this as an early stage researcher, a postgraduate or undergraduate student, have a look at the COST website, because you will find that you can apply to come on a short-term scientific mission. You don't need to be already established on the project to be able to apply. So if there's a topic area that you're interested in doing, you can explore that, assuming that you're able to win be successful in your application. But the focus I wanted to put on here, is why I'm here, is I'm looking at the parts I've been boldened here: strengthening existing networks, fostering collaboration between researchers, and gaining access to specific data. I am not an expert in octo and nonagenarians. I would see my expertise as being about the use of mobiles, the applications of ICTs and mobiles in everyday life. I'm interested in user behaviours. I've specifically researched children and people up to probably mostly the age of 50 or 60. My PhD looked at emotion in the social practices of mobile phone users, and that was older people. But as we go on, we can sort of draw a bit more about that knowledge out. But also my background before I became an academic in about 2001 was that I worked in industry, and I had 20-something years in British Telecom, and I was lucky enough to be involved in the start of mobile phones in the UK, in the sense of being involved in putting up cell sites and so on, which was very exciting because everyone was competing like mad to get there first. And then I was asked to commercialise the digital GSM system for one of the UK mobile phone companies. So the engineers we worked together, but the engineers basically handed over the specification, and then we had to turn it into something that you're very familiar with using today. So I have a long background in all generations of mobile phones and mobile communications, and also some history in telecoms as well. So that's about me. Now I'd like to sort of know about you, please. Could I ask those who are here, and if anybody first is out there on Twitter, would like to be involved and tell us if you who you are or your institution, or just give us a hint, then that will give us some context for communicating with you. But for those in the room, could I just ask you, as I've set up here, introduce your name, your institution, and a couple of sentences about your research interests relevant to this workshop. And also, what's your expectations? What would success look like for you when you leave this room? Sorry, yes, I need to give you the microphone. Who'd like to begin? Yeah?
Okay, my name is Mariona. I'm a researcher here in the CN&SC, and I'm working in a research about senior co-housing in Spain. Yeah, my expectations, it's maybe to learn more about the use of social media or ICT, because it's not a topic in our research, but I think it's also interesting.
Hi, my name is Lluvi Ferrer, and I'm a PhD candidate here in WOC, and I'm in a CareNet research group, and I'm in my first year of PhD, and I'm focusing on my thesis on the current constitution of social and material constructions of aging processes, and how and the role of design, the role of the design of the new technologies or social and technological innovations in the idea of being old today. So I'm interested in how ageism is inscribed in the very design of the innovations. And I'm interested on this workshop because it's talking about ageism, and it's interesting also to focus on the specific cohorts that sometimes are being excluded in terms of technological relations and uses, as a users.
So Andrea Rosales, I am researcher here at IN3. I do research related with older people and mobile technologies, particularly wearable technologies. Also related with human-computer interaction, with how people use and how to learn to use new technologies and what for. And I was curious about this, your approach about emotions and emotions related with the use of mobile technologies.
Man behind the camera. My name is Daniel Blanch. I work here as a research assistant for the Communication Networks and Social Change Research Group. Pretty much what I'm doing here is about aging and social and political participation. And so pretty much I'm interested in researching about older people's involvement in political activities, such as activism and social movements. And right now there are a couple of other ideas that I might be involved in, which is about grandmothers using Facebook and other ICTs to communicate abroad or within the country with their families. And so this is my contribution thus far. Thank you.
My name is Mireia. I didn't say that before, and I'm part of the Communication Networks and Social Change Research Group, and my interest is on looking at how older people relate with different digital devices for communication, mostly mobile, but other kind of devices as well. And the relationship could be around use and non-use and rejection of use. And I love to approach them from a non-patronizing perspective. That is, that I like to consider older age as another life stage, so trying to avoid any kind of prejudice on that. And my expectation is just to be able to see how you can explain us your whole experience on the study of the knowledge about mobile communication, just bringing it into this group age, and just learning how are your expectations around this research you are starting. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that's given me a good clue. And if I stray too far off stream for your interest, then shout. And if you see a point at which you can develop your knowledge on any of these slides, then that's the opportunity to ask a question and get some debate going. And I think the other side, which I'm quite passionate about, is that I'm really looking for positive ways of realising the potential for these people, rather than focusing, as so much research does, on the rather negative sides, or even the children's research I did that focused on safety and harm and so on. When you do that kind of research, what you also find out is an enormous amount of really extraordinary and exciting things that people are doing with ICT and online generally. And it's really exciting to sort of go through that material, as I did for the EU Kids Online and Net Children Go Mobile study. And if you look on my LinkedIn page, actually, there's a link to it on the LSE website, a report that just draws out these positive things, that positive uses for children. And I think it'd be really great to have that same thoughts for other generations. So aims of workshop, we might need to adapt this a bit, but we want to highlight and explore gaps in research that we know about the octogenarians' experiences of media and communications. Yes, we are focusing on negative issues, but we're focusing on the positives to actually get rid of those. Want to consider new research topics that deliver greater understanding of media and communications issues that impact their lives. So are there any areas that haven't yet been researched? Are there combinations? Are there multidisciplinary opportunities? Are there learnings from other studies that are nothing to do with age or older people that we could bring to bear on this particular question? Obviously, it'd be great to build and grow network. And at the end of this week, I have to provide a report. So thank you all very much for participating, and the outcome of this will be included in that report as well, as clearly this information, I think, will be available after the event. So why the over 80s? Now, there is a growing amount of research on this older age group, but as far as I can see, they do appear to be a less well-researched as an age cohort. And the question I mentioned in the introduction, is it reasonable to assume people aged 80 and older are the same as people in their 60s or 70s? I find that I'm looking at research which talks about older people, and then I look at the oldest age of the people who've been interviewed, and it may be 70, 75. In my own PhD study, I tried to get older people. I was limited, obviously, within a PhD as to sort of how much I could actually do. My oldest interviewee was 80, but the majority of my interviewees were between 45 and 60. And it seems to me that it's there's a sort of a slight neglect somewhere in actually making sure that we are involving everybody across the whole age group. Or if it's not about people over 75, then let's say it's not about people over 75 and not try to apply that knowledge to that older age group, because we don't know if age matters in this sense, because we haven't asked enough. On a very practical level, the number of people living into their 90s and older is growing. Ageing societies has been the topic of numerous government global policies, and it will continue to be so as the impact on the economy starts to bite, and we have to find ways of funding. And your point about the housing, housing issues become very acute. The other point I've noticed is that a lot of the research will look at the medical side of life. It'll look at issues around dementia, around the frailties of becoming very old. And that is very important to research, but there's more we need to look at. It does appear to me that there are people over 80 more likely to have limited mobility. There's a point at which people have to stop driving. In some countries, particularly the UK, if you live outside of a city, not being able to drive immediately means that you can't go anywhere. People may be physically inactive, but mentally still very alert. So there's lots of different factors coming into play here. But the desire to be involved is still very, very strong. Other questions to ask: is the media representation of this age group ageist? Is it fair? One of the things we looked at in previous meetings of our cost action is this point about the representation of older people. And I found it absolutely fascinating. We had a meeting in Prague, and our work group chair showed an advertisement that's in the UK for spectacles, glasses, and the response from the different people in the audience really showed how the cultural perception of what's acceptable, is it ridicule, is it humour, is another layer to think about, because in the UK what we found as quite harmless humour in another country was seen as being quite offensive, and in others I don't see what the problem is at all. And then the final point, what communications issues are peculiar to this age group? So that's a lot of questions that I've asked. I don't know if anyone else has got any others that I've missed, but I can press on. I put this slide up. I've taken this from government, the UK government website, and I just think that the first point that struck me when I looked at this is that if you're over 89, you're sort of added on as an extra, because historically the data doesn't really cover people who are over 89. At the moment there are 500,000 people aged over 90 in the UK, and as it says here, the age structure of the UK population up until 2030. So it's a little distorted because we're still looking at 90 to 94 as a single group, 95 to 99 and then over 100. But there are many factors here, the economic factors, the increased numbers of older people in work. And I thought this was an interesting point that was made in this report. Increased numbers of older people in work need not disadvantage the young. Indeed, previous attempts, both in the UK and abroad, to create jobs for young people by encouraging older people to withdraw from the labour market have failed. A lot of people were encouraged out of their jobs, and the new jobs were not provided. A whole lot of issues there. And when are you too old to work? Are you ever too old to work? And on that point, why does a person's age become a trigger for media attention? This was one of those sort of stories that ran for a week in the UK. Senior citizen, this is a man, he put an advertisement in his local paper in Devon, which is the southwest of UK. Senior citizen, 89, seeks employment in Paynton area, 20 hours a week, still able to clean, like gardening, DIY and anything. I have references. Old soldier, airborne forces, saved me from dying of boredom. Well, not surprisingly, this was quite quickly picked up in the media, and the gentleman concerned, when I last saw, and the link there takes you to a picture of him serving in a cafe. I heard him interviewed on the Today programme on Radio 4. I've heard him interviewed on various programmes, and the interviewer's stance when talking to the man was one of incredulity, of slight awe, of laughing, of seeing it as a funny thing, and clearly the man was enjoying the attention. But I was listening, I was thinking, why should this be a story? Why should it be something amazing? Why should I be also thinking, what a great guy, he's out there, he's looking for work? How should we be seeing people of different age, in this age group, in this way? Is it a good thing? In going through the literature, and I've been having fun going through books and more literature while I've been here these 3 days, I came up with a few examples from the UK. These are samples. They're not necessarily intended to be the best practice. They're not necessarily intended to be by any means representative, but they're just ones that I'd come across that I knew about. And on the next slide, there's one that I'm involved in as an advisor on a sort of a distant basis. Do any of you recognise any of these? The Dundee University User Centre, I've got a DVD from 2004, which I think was a good foundational piece of work, the Utopia trilogy. And we can have a look. Don't want to go through too many of these. Oops. Let's see what comes up when I press that. So this is an old slide, but usable technology for older people, and I would say that this group pioneered actually working with older people to co-design products. Have a look more if this is an area that you're interested in. I'm not going to try and speak to it because it's not my knowledge area. And now I can't remember how to get out of this and back into the presentation. Just that. Yep, excellent. Sorry, did you? Yeah, yeah. Hold on.
It's also in the ground floor of the university in an open space, and is the space for all the older people who live around the university to go and learn. And they're like in the middle of the university, and they manage the group by themselves. They are older people hosting other older people learning about technologies, and they do collaborate with different projects. They collaborated in a project I was working, and they do collaborate with different research projects in the university. So it is good for them and for the university also. It is amazing.
Thanks, Andrea. Thank you. Following on really from that, and I think the Dundee people may well have been involved in this one. This is sustaining IT use by older people to promote autonomy and independence, the New Dynamics of Ageing project. And colleagues of mine at the University of Surrey, and one of them, Chris Lim, is now at Dundee. David Froelich is still at Surrey, Professor David Froelich, and is developing and building on the work they did, but which was co-designing ICT concepts. So coming in with ideas that were then developed much in the way that you were just saying, older people coming into a centre, wanting to be involved, wanting to be part of the process, and providing their, not expertise as ICT developers, but their just expertise of their age group and their particular needs. And if anybody wants to have a look, I've got a booklet of it around here, but the link is on the you can get to it through this or from the next one. which is the follow-up project that is happening at the University of Surrey just now in collaboration with the University of São Carlos, with Paula Castro, who has just gone back to Brazil this week after being at Surrey for a year. And so here, mobile technology for older people, you can read that for yourselves online. So I'm sure that as I'm looking at this, there are multiple other projects carrying on. This other one at Brunel, where there's a long-established and excellent team. They're looking at the ageing studies theme, and there's many really excellent pieces of work going on there as well. And I have yet to dig into that literature to see what might be applicable to the over 80s age group.
So in Brunel, if I'm not wrong, in Brunel, one of the persons who's there is Wendy Martin. Yeah, we can get some contact through to her. Yeah, and she's fantastic.
Thank you. So then, sort of moving on and thinking about this from a European point of view, there is an enormous amount of money being expended on robotics research in Europe, and it's a hugely exciting area. I'm not sure if anybody's been to any events where these projects have been presented. You know, the prototypes can be a little clunky, but on the other hand, there are some which have already proved successful, and perhaps the one that most people know about is Paro, the little seal that is very successful as a little robot seal with a furry coat that is used for comforting people with dementia. There's other projects which are more targeted at children that bring out sort of draw on the emotional side. And Paro does this as well. And if you look at the book, the Social Robots book that I've jointly edited, there's some really good examples in there of social robots from the human interaction perspective. So understanding perhaps the emotional response that a human being has with the robot, and the way that the robot becomes like a companion in some way. And this particular project is one of these various projects that were funded in Horizon 2020. And there's just a 2-minute video here which gives you a glimpse. Oops.
It is something that we are looking to introduce to people that have mild cognitive impairment, so that it can enhance their daily lives by monitoring things such as their behaviour, their respirations, trying and stimulate them into activities, etc., things like that.
I think it might help the loneliness. It might take some of that away from people. You know, it's company for them, sort of thing, to sit around and to chat to, and yeah, I think that's one of the good things about it. And also to remind you of your drugs, and because sometimes you do tend to forget. You know, there's something there just say, oh, you've got to take your drugs.
The technology is brilliant. It's maybe frighteningly brilliant for a lot of people. Now, of course it's worthwhile developing it and spending the money, because the future is robots.
I hope they develop it so it becomes a lot better, so we, get arms and be able to do more things for you, like maybe getting your tablets out and drugs and things like that. Yeah.
It's basically such things as dressing, maybe, combing hair, maybe even cleaning teeth. That sort of personal use on a very limited basis.
So that's one example of a number of different projects going on at the moment to create robotic machines that would help older people with their everyday lives. And I think those that's a really good clip to sort of give an indication of perhaps the expectations, some of which may be greater than the reality of what can actually be achieved. But also recognising the fact that with the ageing population, we are in a situation where there are not enough care workers, there are not enough support people, there are not enough family members anymore. And somehow or other, simple gadgets that could help us in our everyday life, not necessarily even for older people, just across our lives generally, may come or will come through robotic assistance. And one of you asked said about the research that I've previously done, and one of the things I'm particularly interested in is this close relationship we have with our mobile phones. So I assume everybody's, you've got your mobile phones or your tablets on your desk or in your hand, and they're never really very far from you unless you make a conscious effort, or conscious decision, should I say, not to have that device. And my argument is that because we have this electronic machine with us, we are effectively the social robot. I am the social robot. Sounding a bit Asimov there. And if you think about that, then I'd love to see this device having the latest technology that I could then either talk to it or touch it, and that would then trigger a robot like that one we just saw. So it would be able to respond, not in a completely sensory way, under my command, and that command could be achieved in multiple ways to suit the individual. But the relationship isn't just me and my device, and each device is completely unique to everybody in the way you set it up. But that device could then be machine to machine with other devices in your house. So we've heard tale of smart houses for decades, and drawing curtains with your phone. And I go home on the train. I'm lucky enough to travel on a train that has people on it who live in, I suppose, a very wealthy part of the UK. And I see them, they're sort of they are using their phones to sort of plan ahead when they get home to put the heating on. May not be anything to do with wealth, it may just be that they're gadget freaks, but that they can use the phone to do so many things now. And smart homes are a reality. But what about smart robots? But what about relationships between the individual at home on their own, or the individual in their care home room, or in their social housing, or in their granny flat, or out in their car, using this social robot that they are with their device. It may only be one function. It may only be that they only ever use their phone for one or two things. Or it may be that they use their phone for everything. And I'm saying phone, but it may not be called a phone when this happens. It may be something else. It may be a wearable. Unlikely at the moment, because wearable devices have got a little way to go before I think they're accepted. So there's lots of interesting debate one can have. And if you're whatever age you are now, by the time if you take this transitional development of the relationship with the machines that you have, this emotional relationship through your life, and we've already had it for 10, 20 years, then that will, I would argue, more easily extend into your older age. So the things you might want to do would diminish, perhaps, as your field of activity diminishes, but there's no reason why something which has become an intuitive part of your everyday life can't continue to be, and that we don't have to bring in extra things for you to learn new, but that we would sort of be on that journey. So we are growing old with our mobile phones as opposed to growing up with our mobile phones. I just sort of thought I'd ask the question, sort of what goes on where you live. I mean, I don't know if anybody wanted to pick up on any of what I've just said, because it's a slightly newer point. But I put this slide in because it becomes clear to me as I begin to read through the literature that self-help and helping others seems to be a key to this, and it's certainly in the information that's been coming out in the UK this week. Our campaign for loneliness, a lot of media attention to loneliness and ageing, and looking back into the local community, what goes on in your community around you that perhaps you're not aware of. And I just thought, well, what goes on where you live? So if you sort of think, well, what does go on where I live? What goes on where I live now? What goes on where I live, you know, maybe if I'm a student, I'm not actually living at home, but I'm still living in as part of a community, whatever that community is. And I just put up here the example of we call it a village, the population is 7,000. There are a multitude of clubs which people aged over 80 participate in. None of those are exclusively for people aged over 80, but most of them are for people who are not working, would be the best way of putting it. But Women's Institute, which is a particular UK genteel activism, perhaps, I don't know. I can feel someone jumping on me and saying, no. But that attracts people of all ages, adult women of all ages. But anyway, there's a whole set there of organisations that people can belong to. But what happens once you become housebound? You can't drive or access public transport. And more importantly, your friends are in the same situation. So your peer group are all suddenly not able to drive. And I belong to one or two of those organisations, and there is a point at which people don't want to come out in the evening because of one reason or another. And the dynamic of the group changes as we organise and reorganise to make sure that everybody continues to be involved. And if they can no longer be involved in that particular group, then what else can they be involved in? But many of the very old are still isolated. They don't need a research project to tell them that. And so, you know, have we done enough research? Is there some action we should be taking? Is the gap not actually the research, but the taking action with the research, the making it happen? You know, there's something that goes beyond the Dundee example, which we were talking about earlier, which is clearly working from what you were saying, Andrea, that people are going into the university and taking part. You know, we have, you know, sort of universal access obligations to telecommunications. Is there a universal obligation for everybody to make sure that nobody is in that situation? Happy for me to go on? So, this research by, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Mika Lowe, Aging Our Way, which is a lovely book, which I enjoyed dipping into and reading substantial sections of. This quote from her, which I will read out, says, "If there's one common pattern, it's the social capital piece. Social connections are valuable for health and well-being. Daily checking by phone by a family member, visit with a Scrabble club, connection with a Sunday church group, whatever it is, the social community, social groups contribute to well-being." And that's kind of reinforcing the point I was just saying on the last slide. Now, what role does the community have? How does somebody fit within a social group, within a community? So my sort of question is, what does best practice media and communication look for the very old look and feel like? How can we find out? This is a question really for us here. How can we find out? What are the complementary studies that could be replicated for this age group? I mentioned earlier the studies of children. Is that one way of looking at it? Are there studies that maybe are about design, engineering design, that might be best involved? Should we be establishing a telecommunications or a communications company that's run entirely by people who are in this so-called retired or very old age group, and their mentors are people in their 20s, for example, you know, turning things on their head. You know, but having said that, you know, what difference could another study of this age group make of the over 80s? You know, is it worth pursuing? You know, what can we do now? So that's kind of the questions I'd like to raise in this workshop environment. And you know, some discussion topics, but maybe if we sort of think about this one here, I don't know if anyone's got any points they'd like to pick up on, or other areas that you'd like me to talk a bit more about. Happy to develop arguments.
I'm sorry, I can say nothing because I'm just fighting with Twitter and
That's fine.
whatever, because there are people following us.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I was looking at you because you look like you were about to say something, not because I was expecting you to to answer any of those questions, but thank you for that. Yeah. Any points? Mm-hmm.
There's a question here from a professor at UOC. Her name is Eulalia Hernández Encuentra. She's at the psychology studies. She belongs to the psychology studies. And I'm going to read the question aloud. Yeah. From your positive point of view, what variables and instruments could you use to evaluate the introduction of tablets to prevent loneliness in older people who are isolated in rural areas?
So how to evaluate?
Yeah. What variables and instruments could you use to evaluate the introduction of tablets to prevent loneliness in older people isolated in rural areas? And she puts, Eulalia puts into parentheses, which I think is an interesting point, that instead of measuring loneliness, which is a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's not like what you would like to talk now, but I just saw that message.
Yeah, so measuring the positive outcome of...
Yeah, and in this case, measuring or evaluation or evaluating the introduction of tablets to prevent loneliness. And I think she's typing, so I'm going to wait a moment.
Okay.
If something else comes here. Yeah, and she's talking about maybe social support could be what you could measure. She mentions instruments as well.
It's a good question. I don't have an instant answer to it. I'm thinking, how would we know if a tablet in the hands of somebody who is currently isolated it has made a difference and minimize their isolation? There's a sort of a before and after question involved in that, inevitably. And I'm not going to try and design a piece of research in response to this point, which I think is very important. Rather than, well, if I go back to when I did my PhD interviews, which was about emotion, in the UK, I don't think we're terribly good at talking about emotion. And so when I used to say to people, I'm doing my PhD on emotion, they'd sort of go, oh, really? Oh, don't ask me about it, you know. And of course, if I asked people from other nationalities, I got loads of information. But anyway, so when I did my interviews, I told them that I was doing a study about mobile phones, people's attachment to mobile phones, and I just said, can you just tell me how this works for you? It was an open-ended interview. Can you tell me what your mobile phone is? What are you doing with it? How does it fit into your life? And then I looked at what they said, and I didn't need to ask if they were emotional about it, because it was what they said about their mobile phone and how passionate they were. Not everybody was passionately in favour. A lot of people were passionately annoyed. And I found that a very interesting way of understanding without suggesting that emotion they were emotional about their relationship with their phones. And perhaps rather than doing a research on loneliness, the approach would be better done in the sense of another aspect of using the tablet, which could be making or renewing friendships, renewing contacts, or finding a thing. I call it a thing because it could be a hobby, it could be a relationship, it could be a something that a person will trigger their use of, want to use a tablet. And it may be that it's not that person on their own. It may be that it would involve a third party working with them. So finding the best example I came across, which is an anecdote, but I still like it because it never got into any study, was a lady in her 90s in a small village, rural village of the UK, was in conversation with somebody at church, and they were talking, it was a memorial day, and she said, I had some brothers who were killed in World War I, and I never found out actually if they really were even killed, because I never heard from them. They went away and never came back. And the person realised that he could find out the answer because in relatively recent time all the records from the First World War had been placed online, and so he took his laptop round to her house and they sat down and went through, and she found out about them. And so the next thing she did was she wanted to get on a plane and go visit where they were buried. And that was a sort of really powerful understanding of the benefits of being able to go online. And as a result of that, other people in the village heard about this experience. She didn't go out and buy a laptop or a mobile phone, but what then happened was that there was a sort of a build-up of oh, I need to find out about something. Oh, Mary, you've got a computer. Can you find out about that for me? And that then started to build the links and the relationships. And then maybe over time, people might well have acquired a computer if they found they needed it enough. So I think that partly addresses. Has anyone else got any thoughts about that particular question? No? Okay, was it? Hold on. Thank you.
Okay. Well, when I read the title of this workshop, the word potential or potentialities, I guess, what do you mean exactly? I mean, potentiality of people over 80 in which sense? To be more visible, to get more social support, to be more part of the community. I mean, if there's any, Thank you.
When I say the potential, I don't mean one specific thing in one specific area. I mean that from what I've read and in, say, Lowe's book, and what I've encountered in the people that I've spoken to, which drew me to the Ageism project, is that people have a lot of knowledge to give, a lot of life experience to share, a lot of fascinating stories to tell. I mean, if you ever get a group of people together and say to them, okay, bring something about yourself and talk about it. If you do that with people who are of all ages, but particularly older people, you find out the most amazing things, and they have done the most amazing things as well. And there's too much of an assumption that because they look like a particular type of person, which is what we would maybe think, that maybe they've just lived a very dull and boring life, where I think we all have surprises when we don't want to wait until we go to their valedictory, somebody's giving out a story about them as they're being buried, and people say, oh, I wish I'd known that about them. There's so much that we can share, and in the process of sharing, we're overcoming the effects of being isolated. But also there's a learning process, a transfer of knowledge. There's a lot of information being lost because of the lack of communication opportunities. So that's what I mean about the potential. to improve the communication opportunities, yes, I'd like, I mean, my own feeling is I'd like there to be more communication opportunities for the over 80s, so that they are in a situation where they are naturally able to continue to be part of society as a whole, and not just, you know, put on a bus and taken to a lunch club or a day centre. It doesn't happen everywhere, but it happens too often. Any other thoughts?
I cannot say without saying it. I would say, just regarding the question of there are complementary studies that could be replicated, in general, I would say that any study could be replicated here. So, I mean, your long experience with teenagers and kids, why not? I mean, in a sense that maybe you need to reframe few things, because it's not the same that when you're a kid and you know nothing, then you cannot assume that a person 80 years or over. But I think that there are common questions that are still there, and as well there are common methodologies and common ways of approaching that can be isolated from the age of individuals, and therefore are valid at any age. And sometimes we tend to frame everything in terms of age, so it's like just being more flexible in that. But I could say that these long ethnographical studies with kids, looking at how they evolve, why not? Or why not to see, for instance, I don't know, these environments that could be learning environments as well, or could be living in a retirement home, or in the case of, you could also study loneliness in a retirement home, totally. I mean, but be staying at home as well. I mean, these kind of questions we have for other group ages, I could say that they might be some, translated, with not that much travels in there.
Yes, yeah. I'm wondering why, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to obtain funding for that kind of project. I'm wondering how it would be responded to, why do you want to, why would we need to know the same kind of information that we found out about children and the way they use the internet? Why would we need to know this about the very old?
Because life expectancy is growing up, and our societies are getting older, and we are getting older. So the most we can know now, the better for the future to make informed decisions. So I understand that, and this has always been the general line. It's teenagers and kids are defining the digital culture. So it's worth to put effort and resources and money on these collectives, because they are going to bring us the trends. It's totally true. I do totally agree. But the point is that, as you said at the very beginning, we know nothing, or almost nothing. Or when it comes to study older people, things end at 75 because they disappear from many official statistics. They are difficult to reach, so we are not going to call them for conducting any kind of interviews, because this is going to cost a lot. And they talk that much, so we don't want to talk to them anyway. And they are not an important group as a marketing target. So this is going to change. And just with this perspective in mind, I think this could help enough to justify the need of understanding this age group as well.
Do you think that would As you were saying that, I was thinking about the research that I did with Leslie Haddon of children's use of mobile phones back in 2004 and 5. And the thing that we very quickly spotted is how price sensitive children are and how many strategies they will have not to spend any money if they don't have to on a mobile phone. And there was one lovely example where a boy wanted to speak to his mum, but he didn't have any credit left on his phone. He had, he probably could have gone and bought some, but instead, I can't remember how he did this precisely, but he got his dad to phone his mum and his mum to phone him, this sort of convoluted way of reaching, communicating, which is simply a way of avoiding spending money. And of course we've seen this developed. I mean, what we've been talking about so far is very strongly, I am UK based and I'm drawing this argument out from a UK perspective and then a European perspective. But if we sort of extend that into sort of globally and global south, the strategies that Jonathan Donner's written about, where we, sort of the pinging on the phone, always reminds me. I'm sorry to use a family anecdote, but sort of people of my father's generation going into the phone box, and it was sort of 3 rings before you press the button and your money dropped down. And most people who can remember the phone boxes where you heard the connection and then you press the money will come out with these stories of different ring codes that they had. And it's fascinating to see how people appropriate the technologies of different generations and different types in actually quite similar ways.
I think there are ways. I mean, there are similar ways on that. I mean, for instance, here, it was really, really popular to do missed calls
missed calls
as a common practice to save money. And older people were there as well. I mean, because they're like teenagers, they are short of money. I mean, they are not that wealthy. Maybe comparatively speaking, right now pensioners are getting better because average salaries are going down and there is a lot of unemployment. However, so they are not, I mean, at any age you are not apart from your society, and you are going to take these into account. So, for instance, these intentional missed calls here were extremely popular at older age as well. And WhatsApp, even though it comes with data and with data plans that are flat rates and they mean just moving one step forward on your final expenditure, it has been a key point to make older people jump into smartphones, because WhatsApp works as SMS, so the practice exists and the mental model is similar, but it's flat rate, and it's not seen as something that expensive, so you keep your costs really, really under control. And I must say that right now that voice calls on WhatsApp are becoming that popular. This is the next one, just avoiding calls over mobile network and going to voice over IP through WhatsApp. And I don't think older people are that detached from innovative practices. The point is that usually we don't look at this age group and their practices, because, for instance, you can see in retirement homes or with people having walkers, how they make the most of the things that surround them to have their belongings with them, and they can become really, really creative.
Yes,
so, and the same, and really creative with the phone as well. So the way they manage the phone, and then how they have this kind of codes with 3 rings or whatever, in as well with the phone, with the mobile phone, because it already became part of our everyday life. So, yeah, I think this could be something nice to explore.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. I think this sort of DIY, do-it-yourself technology. A colleague of mine did his PhD on that a few years ago, and the solutions that, because you have a lifetime of experience of doing things, the way you might bring that knowledge to bear on your the solution that you find will be something completely different, which is why actually co-design with people of different ages is so exciting, because you're working with children, they've got no history or anything. They'll come up with different solutions to somebody who's trying to sort of over-engineer it, perhaps. That's it. It's some good points there. Yeah.
There's another question by Eulalia.
Yes.
Okay, so now this one came through Twitter, so it's shorter. And the question is, evaluate triggers instead of loneliness. What about the emotional issues? Could you explain a little bit? Any particular instrument for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sociologist by background. So what I call an emotion would be perhaps a different interpretation to a psychologist's approach. I know when I looked at it before, the number of different ways we have of measuring and interpreting, and my personal view on it is that it's really a very subjective thing, and I do fight against using the sort of traditional measures or traditional academic measures for emotion, but instead trying to find out the ways that people are expressing the emotion. It could be that in the words they're using or the things that they're doing, but I'm not convinced by the multiple number of apps that there are that claim to be able to respond to your emotion. It's maybe works for some, maybe not for others. I don't know, everyone here smiled when I said that, so I don't know. Did you have anything you wanted to say? No, just, okay. Didn't want to put you on the spot. Yeah. So do I have any? No, I don't. Yes, they do exist within the academic and environment. What would I use? I would go back to the sociology of emotion, I think, and I would start to sort of explore a little bit more about, the feelings. I quite like. I mean, I liked sort of Ali Hochschild's approach, where she had that sort of feeling rules, and the way that we sort of have emotion management techniques for dealing with our lives, and so that would be my personal route. I don't know if anyone has any other suggestions. Not now, but thank you. Interesting question, though.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I wonder whether there are any suggestions coming up on Twitter.
Not really now, but there is another point by another participant who's following us on the streaming. Her name is Montse Monliao. She's a Catalan as well, and she's an entrepreneur interested in aging processes, and she wrote a report called She Aging about new business possibilities and services for not strictly speaking older people, but people over 40 years old who as well age as the rest of the population. And she has a really interesting comment that says that the point is that maybe design communication should be truly centered on the target 80 plus as a normal audience. So maybe, and she's bringing the idea of making it normal or making it average those groups that right now are just in the periphery.
Yes, I completely agree. What would be an interesting study would be to do a huge study of how old do you feel. Not how old do you medically feel, how old do you feel? And I don't know if any of you ever tried that out, but the results are not, I feel like a 75, I'm behaving like a 75-year-old. Actually, I feel pretty much like I did when I was 25, or unfortunately, though, I can't act the way. So yes, with the things have changed, but the decision tree in your head, if I can put it that way, very unscientifically, is that which was being used in your 20s or 30s. So I completely agree. Why are we trying to design things specifically for people who are still thinking the same way, with the same sorts of process and analysis as when they were 25? Fine, design something so that the fact that I can't feel when I touch something, or my hand keeps dropping onto a machine and the cursor keeps zipping off because I haven't realised I haven't lifted my hand off it. Design something to accommodate that, but that's a function, that's not about the self, it's not about who you are. So yes, I completely agree. Being normal is all ages, which is why I do advocate this idea of designing solutions to the needs that apply to the stages and the changes that you have in your life, which could be bereavement, which could happen at any stage of your life, marriage, happen at any stage of your adult life, children, the arrival of a grandchild, great-grandchild, great-great-grandchild is just an amazing event, and that has a huge impact on people, not just the mother, but other members of the family. And the grandparents' role, I'm told, is quite a unique experience. And again, that can happen from your 30s up to 90s and older. So yes, design around a response to those things, not around a response to age. So thank you for the question. Good one. I'm just pausing to look at the time, plenty of time. So I'm just thinking, when we talked about complementary studies, and I was thinking about, I'm thinking just ideas around sort of activism. We haven't really addressed this. I don't come from a background of researching that area. One of the reasons I was interested, or that prompted me to think about the Barcelona area, Catalonia, was that on the occasions I've been here, there's always a protest going on, led by people who are older. And I've not seen that in any other country I've visited, and maybe they haven't been in the right places. And when I was watching the news this morning, I'm sorry that I don't understand, I only speak English, because there was the most extraordinary debate going on to do with, I think it's to do with fuel prices. And I just wondered if there was any feedback around, whether there should be more action research, more activism. People are nodding at me, but I'm not sure whether anyone's willing to say anything. But yeah, please.
No, just I would like to suggest to highlight something that I think that maybe it's important when we are talking about technologies and practices related to, and it's maybe I'm repeating myself, but this is the thing that I am focused on, and I think that it's sometimes important when we're talking about social practices and the question specifically of ageism, that it's is the question of design, and maybe it's important to look into the making of things, because when we are designing something, some device, technology, specific technology, we are also designing a prospective user, and we are designing the actions that he or she is allowed to do or not to do, in terms of practice or in terms of independence, or to be more autonomous or less. So it's kind of a dialogic thing that between the designing and the users, the current users of people, in this case the older people with technologies, how they appropriate these things. But I like to consider that technology is made by people and for people. There are experts, designers, engineers that are thinking in the user and in the older user, and they take into account specific imaginary about them and how they translate these images of the aging in specific assembly of devices. I think it's an interesting and important thing to make research, because there is some, but not so much research about this issue.
Do you think that older people should be involved? Because the one thing that we don't know about is what it's like to be older than we are. We only know what it's like to be younger than we are. So if the majority of designers are within working age, which perhaps would be a good assumption, should companies be employing more people who are much older?
Maybe, but actually they are older people. It's even more involved in this designing processes, and maybe their participation on these processes make a difference of the experience, can make a better improvements of to not exclude some aspects that concerns the older people.
It's a difficult one to solve, isn't it? Because until the generation of designers reaches enough people in the retirement age to be able to be the designers, then the age group we're talking about are only ever going to be able to comment on a design, I suppose. But it's as you were saying that, I was thinking. Sorry.
In response to your question about if companies should hire or should contract more older people, I would start just a smaller step, like just really seriously considering older people in design. Not only trying to think what older people think and make decisions based on that. It's something with Andrea we often find in human-computer interaction papers. It's like, I think that older people should be whatever. And to me, one of the most hilarious examples, but it's published, so you can quote it if you want to, is somebody saying that, oh, you know that older people don't use their computers 100% of the possibilities of their computers. I was astonished. I don't know anyone who can use 100% of the things that they have in the computer, you know? So it's like, again, maybe go and talk to them and ask them what they need and if they feel that they are using it below the capacities or below their interest, or and just this use, not even, this is the use of something already done, but sometimes I could agree that maybe including older people that way could be really interesting and really disruptive as well. But just starting by the first step that some companies are doing this is true, so I don't want to make it worse than it is, but sometimes it's that basic. Just if you're gonna make a design for this target, just count on them.
Yeah. I was just thinking as you were saying that about how there's an assumption that example you gave. Well, because you're old, you don't know how. You know, you won't use all of that. And the opposite is the case with children, where there's an assumption that because you're young, you know everything. And you have this, sort of, oh, I'll just ask my granddaughter to set up the television for me because she's only 7, and 7-year-olds are supposed to know. And there's an amazing advert, and I can't remember which company it is now, that sort of played on this and said, and it's these sort of it's 7-year-old children, and they're saying, and because I know, kind of thing. And but actually, children don't know. They know what they need to know to do what they want to do, and they don't always know all of that. And it's very precisely compartmentalized and very exclusive in a way. And to place, but as I mentioned earlier, maybe what it is about a child is that they're not held back from having a go at finding a solution, or maybe aren't prepared to admit they don't know. And with, we're actually putting quite a stress on a child, and by assuming that they know when they don't. At the other end of the scale, it's exactly the same situation with people in their 80s and 90s. We can all think of examples anecdotally of people in that age group and who are more than competent users of ICT, who are not representative of this stereotype, patronised stereotype of an older person. But as I said before, they seem to be marked out as being extraordinary, some of which is not helped by people within the different age groups reinforcing that stereotype. Well, I can't do that. And I just give an example of, I was reading on someone's Facebook page where they'd posted an angry rant by a friend who worked in a phone shop. He said, I am absolutely fed up of people coming in of a certain age and not being prepared to listen to me. He said, just listen. Don't open the gambit by saying, well, of course I'm older, so I'm not really going to be able to understand this. And so he said, I'm trying to explain it to you, but if you just stop saying, but I'm too old to understand this, and listen to me, And I was thinking, yes, there's sort of so many different aspects ways you can look at it.
There are reactions as well on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Both Montse and Eulalia are saying things, but Montse is just reconfirming the fact of getting older people into design is pretty interesting. And then Eulalia brought an example. We attended a session where they were presenting something. You're gonna find it on Twitter, but they are called, there's a maker convent.
Oh yes, yeah, the makers.
Here in Barcelona, yeah, they are makers. It's el convent de Sant Agustí. So it's a space of creation and production and digital making, and they explain a very nice experience where they involved a group of older women. So in one of the courses they have, and they designed objects in a 3D printer based on the requirements of the group. So they use these open access blueprints for deciding what to make, and so they explain us their experience with them. The main point was to discuss the design itself of the objects, and based on what is available online with these open access blueprints for creating different products, they sometimes just alterate the design to create differences for them to be practical. So yeah, through this kind of public participation in such places, this could be interesting as well to include older people in design. Yeah.
Yes, the makerspace and the is a really excellent approach, and something that's I've seen in quite a few of the UK universities as well. Professor Anne Light's done some work on that, and a colleague at LSE as well.
That's it,
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's a way of sort of sharing and involvement. Yeah, I had a question though, in the sense of, we talked about complementary studies and things, but whether there's a need for researching the over 80s age group, would one way of addressing the issues that we've been talking about be to research the 60 to 80 age group? Because they're the people who are perhaps with the responsibilities, or maybe slightly younger, with responsibilities for helping manage caring and assisting people, family members particularly. The point I made earlier about we don't know what it's like to be older. Is there a sort of a dual cohort study that one could develop where the older people are guiding the next generation down, A, for a preparation process, but B, to try and problem solve some of the issues that they're encountering? I don't know if that's makes sense, but I haven't yet delved into the area of trying to understand how the problems that are encountered are being solved, and who by outside of the various sort of medical and health research.
I think maybe it's not only related with the next generation, but with the whole life course, no? I don't know if there is any study or survey among adults if we are preparing ourselves for being old, if we are conscious in our decisions every day that we will be old and we need to be prepared for this, or we need to prepare this moment. Like, there are a lot of decisions you make in your everyday life related with even financial decisions, health decisions, and other things related with the environment where you live, and this will have an impact when you are old. So maybe we cannot do too much. I'm so worried with this question of what can we do now, and not only in terms of research, but in terms of in general, the society. And I would say that most of the decisions are personal decisions, so there is less space to do things when you think that most of the decisions are personal decisions and decisions you take during your whole life. I have a friend who is convinced that he will never be old. He expects to die before being 60. So he lives his life in this way, and he makes decisions in this way. But he's so conscious of these decisions he's making, but maybe not everybody is that conscious. So why we, the society, should be responsible for these decisions?
Is this working? Yeah. If you think about that let's think about that from that point you just made, from a communications point of view, or from a media and communications point of view, and think about the question we had about tablets in the hands of older people. And I was just thinking about the practical ways that you would respond on a personal basis. So sometimes the barriers to making the decisions are because, I don't know, for example, we would not imagine coming to university now if we could not have internet access or Wi-Fi. And I expect in the student halls the same thing applies. All student rooms have to have broadband access. Why don't we have the same attitude in homes for seniors? Are all care homes, are all sheltered accommodation? How many houses accommodate, that are designed to accommodate people in older life, automatically have broadband in every room, automatically have Wi-Fi. I mean, the UK, I know they don't, because I could never use my phone. And I just wonder, back to the point about what's different, we've got this normative experience of life throughout the life course, but we're not allowing people to behave like that because we're determining through the infrastructure support that that people of certain ages or in certain environments don't actually need to have access to the internet. So, nowadays, if you're going to have a multi-generational contact with a family, and say grandchildren, there's plenty of papers that talk about relationships between grandchildren and grandparents and how fantastic it is to be able to Skype or use some other form of communication. But if your grandchild comes and visits you and can use their phone and feel comfortable in themselves because they're able to just keep in touch with their WhatsApp with their friends while they're talking to auntie or granny or someone. But they can't because, or can they? So maybe there are some solutions which are nothing to do with the sort of understanding the sort of questions you were just asking, about individual decisions, and they could just be the enablers that help us to be who we want to be.
I think that individual decisions about aging.
Andrea turned it off.
About these individual decisions about what to do when you get older. I think there's like a social view or discourse about age. For instance, when we think as a society about kids, we all agree that we have to we have to take care of them, and also there's the same discourse about old people, but at least in Spain, from a few years ago, it was a family thing. It was not viewed as a social problem, but something that the family, especially women, have to deal with. It was not a social issue. Now it's changing. Families are changing. Women are working, so now we have this problem. So I don't know. Yeah, so related about this individual decisions. Yeah, well, I don't know.
I think it's a good point. Maria.
Go ahead. Well, I had two comments when it's about these individual decisions and how infrastructures and what the society expects us to do is shaping what we do at any age. And I do totally agree with you with the fact that it would be great if when we think about infrastructures for older age, we include just on a basic electricity and broadband. That's it. But accessible broadband would be needed, because the example you were giving about not only the grandkids wanted to visit grandparents, but as long as there is Wi-Fi and good connection, they will be happy because they could keep playing with the mobile phone or the tablet. There is an experience in a retirement home, a chain, which is located here in Catalonia in Spain, and they were explaining their experience. So they were very happy because they allowed the relatives who visit the person living in retirement homes to use the Wi-Fi. And they said that they could, but they changed the system, so you had to go to the front desk and ask for the password. And what they And every people who visit people living in the retirement home had to sing in. So they always more or less can make a kind of statistics about visitors. And they found that there was a positive correlation between use of this Wi-Fi and kids coming to visit grandparents. And they were really happy with that. But the point is that the moment they changed that system, every person living in the retirement home, every time they wanted to connect their laptop or their mobile phone to the Wi-Fi, had to introduce a password. So it's not like being at home, open your laptop and getting Wi-Fi, but it's getting to this terrible front page with this password, which is really easy. But but never changes properly. So you had to fight against the computer. So this ended up on those few residents who used to use the Wi-Fi just giving up and using only the mobile phone because the computer was useless and they had to fight. So again, it's not only the infrastructure, and it's infrastructure itself, but then how you think about the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And the point is that the people managing the retirement home knew that not that much residents could use the Wi-Fi. So for them, Wi-Fi was more related to visitors than to residents. So this is one, and the other one, it's about the idea of researching the older ones means researching about a period of life we don't have experience about it, which is a really, I think it's a challenging idea. To me, the main difference is that, well, I could say that I could make research on kids and I can have memories about being a kid, but maybe not the rich analytical thing I could achieve now. But the point is, like, I could understand, so making research on groups you don't belong to. So if I research about men, I'm not a man. If I research about somebody who's not my sexual orientation, it's not my experience. And in this case, the point is that, yeah, it's true. I mean, this is the further experience for anyone. And I think it's good to keep the idea inside about the fact that it's gonna be difficult to have people conducting research living in this period of time, of life. But the number of people who could be conducting research is gonna increase as well, because life expectancy is getting older. And I don't think that, I mean, there are very famous intellectuals making research until 90s or whatever. So this number is going to increase. So it's going to be interesting to incorporate them if they want to in research as well. But just as a general thought.
No, they're interesting points. As you were, the point you just made before this one about the Wi-Fi, which is really interesting. As you were saying that, I was thinking how cable television overcame, sort of how to access, and thinking back to the original design process for using mobile phones with SIM cards, and the original idea was that the SIM card would be like a credit card and that you would slot it into the phone each time you wanted to use it. And as you were describing that situation, I thought that's really kind of what you need for a password. You need to be able to slot it in, or not even that. You need there are solutions, but they're not. It's about sort of sharing across technologies, maybe, and back as technology has advanced, it seems that the interconnectivity has diminished, and the overlapping of perhaps design ideas has as well. But there's lots of opportunity there, which would not just be relevant to that particular case in point, but will be relevant within business, which is perhaps where the revenue opportunity would be, that would generate the need. Yes, it's difficult. So it's fine having these conversations now, but what do we do? How can we activate? How can we make a difference with the research that's been done so far, and find the new research ideas that are going to continue to make a difference in the future, so that people in their everyday life who encounter these situations for the first time are not feeling as if they're the only person on this planet who's ever had to deal with this problem, when millions of people have. And I think that seems to be a recurring theme in the sort of feedback I get when I sort of try and explore this. You know, is this really a problem within my community? So I was just thinking it might be worth doing a bit of a sum up, do you think? Are there any more points? I wasn't trying to sort of bring it to an end, but I was just thinking we've gone off on lots of different tangents. And maybe if I'd drawn a mind map rather than a list, I would probably be in a stronger position to do this. But I didn't. But I was thinking back to the sort of the headline points that have come up from the sort of interested people, the people who are involved in this workshop. You know, and we've had the questions about about measuring emotion, about taking a positive or designing research that looks at positive aspects of life rather than looking at the negative aspects of life. And you know, we've sort of touched on political activism, but it's kind of not really been developed. We've talked about ageism as a sort of an undercurrent, I think, going through. It's sort of implicit in what we've been saying, and in particular this idea that people don't change who they are as they get older, but maybe they change how they physically are, or how they can conduct their everyday life. And you know, we've talked about different ideas around social media as well, and the fact that it's a sort of a movable feast. It's something that I think WhatsApp is the good example at the moment, which is being appropriated by older age people, perhaps because of the price sensitivity issue, because it's easy to use. It's interesting because you have been able to do voice over IP, voice over internet, for decades. But what is it about WhatsApp that's just made people think, oh, I can do that? And you've been able to do it already, but why suddenly? So that would be an interesting one to look at, perhaps. And maybe, you know, I know you're already doing some research, right, on, or have done some on older people's use of WhatsApp. But it brings into bear the idea of family groups, and maybe the idea that WhatsApp is used, you know, for a more family-oriented relationship, perhaps, and thereby perhaps opening the door to more communication across family groups with this older age group. I think another point that's come out quite strongly is the idea of looking at the whole life course, looking at solutions that could be applicable to or be picked up by any age group, that might need to be adapted in some functional way for different age groups, but will be the same solution. And so understanding the potential of over 80s is about perhaps the inclusivity argument, that bringing them not as a separate age cohort, but as part of the life course, and focusing on life stage or life events as a means of involving, and maybe the makerspace argument point that was made earlier is a really good case in point, where normally it does involve the passing on of skills, particularly skills which may be dying out, craft skills, or skills that are acquiring new interest. I mean, knitting has been one that's been that's had a transformation, making your own clothes, sort of engineering, design, and so on. And it would be quite nice, just speaking personally, to see that changing around so that the makerspace is being run by children and the people coming to learn are the older people. And so the men in sheds concept may be, sort of children in playhouses with, passing on skills which are to do with digital technologies. We also talked briefly about media representation, but we haven't really touched on that, and we've probably not got enough time to open up the window of the representation of this age group within the media. But are there any other points that people here want to explore, or that we have from Twitter?
Well, particularly Eulalia mentions that you may want to share the sociological and psychological perspectives, so I'm gonna put you through in contact because
Thank you.
I think it's gonna be interesting. But beyond of that and general reflections, I don't think there are more comments coming. I would say I don't want to miss anyone, but I don't see anything more coming here. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Eulalia as well mentions that somehow in psychology it turns to be the same. I understand that it turns to be the same, this way of thinking about what older people would like to have, or about making decisions on what older people would need, just disempowering them, because we've been talking about disempowering people because they cannot make their own decisions during their life course. Yeah. But
Okay,
I would
thank
say
you.
that's it. Yeah.
So I think in that sum up we found that maybe less well researched areas, maybe I need to find out more, but there's some really good, for me as a sort of a data gathering mode, there's been an enormous amount of ideas and come out of this discussion, so thank you very much. I think one of the points seems to come out is that when this question here I've got, are there ageism and media and communication issues specific to the very old? It seems to me that yes, but they're the same issues that are relevant for other ages, but they're not well addressed for the very old because we haven't allowed, we haven't developed the research to make sure that we've included people in this over 80 age group, or certainly over 90 age group. What research could make a difference to whom and where? I think we've probably covered that. And I don't want to sort of come up with new things now. And can we build an existing and or create new collaborations? I think that's something to explore outside of this moment. But if anybody is following this up, I'm not sure if this is going to be made available outside of this live stream. But in any event, the contact points are clear from the Twitter and this presentation, so do get in touch is the best way of saying that. And kind of, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that maybe we should have done? As I was asked yesterday.
I think we are all
Forgotten.
really exhausted.
We're all out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of sort of have we achieved our expectations of the day, can I just sort of go around the room, and I won't ask you to speak into the microphone unless you want to, but do you feel that your sort of expectations have been delivered? Are there things that you wish you Can we do?
I like to be, I like more to the instrument, so surprised by
Yeah.
by the new things that are coming in here. But I don't know how to express it. But sometimes expectations are not the most important thing, because you learn new things on sharing, and maybe are more interesting than your previous expectations.
Thank you.
It's nice.
Thank you. That's nice of you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, for me, it's covered a territory that I hadn't thought about, had no idea we were going to sort of explore into, and some other. It's been really interesting. Is it okay to pack it, or do we want to?
I think we can finish. So
Yeah.
everyone
It's
here-
5:20, so.
Yeah. So
I'm
people who want to catch the bus can catch it. This is
Okay.
yeah, and before ending, I would like to take the opportunity of say thank you to all the people here in the room, and to you as well, Jane, and as well to people who have been following us through Twitter. It's amazing because at the very end, no, it's not true. From the very beginning, we had the connection between the COST Action and the ACT project, the Canadian project on aging, communication and technologies, because among others, Wendy Martin, who I mentioned before, has been following us, and as well Eulalia and Montse, and maybe other people who said nothing, who knows. But I'm really happy with this mixture, and it's not that easy to make communication that fluent through these channels, but I'm really happy with that. But I think you deserve to close the session. So,
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion. It's been really good. Thanks everyone.
okay.